Today I want to talk to you guys about This Strange Life of Ivan Osakin, and this is by P.D. Uspensky. Uspensky is most well known for Tertia Morgana, which I've talked about previously, as well as In Search of the Miraculous, which I've also talked about previously. He's most well known, in general for kind of being one of Gurdjieff's top students. If you don't know who Gurdjieff is, very interesting character. Basically, his idea was that man is asleep. And you see these ideas very much in this book, but this book is very different from the other stuff that Uspensky wrote, because Uspensky primarily dealt with nonfiction, where this is fiction. This is a novel. This is a very... I was very surprised about reading this book, because generally when you see like a philosopher or a thinker or a metaphysician that writes a book, it's going to be a means to an end. Like, you read Khalil Gibran and there's not really a plot to it. There's just poetry. There's just heart. There's depth. And not saying that's what I want Gibran to do, but it's when you can weave a story and messaging together in such an intricate way, and the writing is also so good that just it's really interesting. And the perhaps the most interesting aspect about this book is that the entire idea of Groundhog's Day, which is the very famous movie with Bill Murray in it, that's based off of this book, because Bill Murray was very much into the Gurdjieff system. I don't know if he was in a group particularly, but I know he did study it. I know it was this book was the inspiration for that very famous movie. I need to go watch it myself. I haven't watched it, but you've definitely seen a TV show. You've definitely seen some sort of media that uses this idea of a repeating day, of the person going through the exact same experience and then eventually finding out that they're trapped in some sort of cycle. And that's really what this story is about. This story is about a young man, Ivan Osakin. He is gifted. He's definitely special. There's something about him that's unique. There's something about him that makes him stand out, but he can't seem to put that down onto the story of life. He can't put that into his everyday life, and he's kind of a failure. He was kicked out of school. He's not a successful poet like he wishes to be. He doesn't really have stable employment, and the woman he loves is from a higher caste than him. He feels lesser of himself. He feels like he is not worthy of her, and in fact she is going away and she is betrothed to someone else. And it's because of this that he goes and visits a magician, and he says to this magician that if only I could... And I'm trying not to spoil it so much. I'm gonna go more into the philosophy, but I'm setting up the plot points here. I'm setting up sort of the philosophical implications of all these ideas. So don't feel like I'm gonna spoil it for you. This is a really good book. I'm not gonna spoil it for you. I want you to go pick it up. I want you to go read it, because it really is one of the more interesting things I've ever read. But basically, he says to this magician, if I just knew everything I knew now, if you put me back 10 years ago, then I would have done so much better. And the magician's like, no, you would be exactly the same. You would become exactly the same person, and you would experience exactly the same things. And Ivan's like, no, I wouldn't. So the magician sends him back 12 years, and now he's back in school. He wakes up and he says to himself, was it all a dream? Was I really dreaming? Was that really my life? Was there really a magician? Was any of this real at all? And at first he has these memories of this prior life, this prior experience, but slowly they begin to fade. Slowly he becomes absorbed in his everyday life, and he begins to understand that something's missing. He at one point gets to the point where he doesn't even remember these premonitions. He doesn't even remember this past life. He doesn't even remember what happened. He has some sort of feeling that there was something more, but that's it. There's no indication that he has been here before. There's no indication that he's lived this life previously. And it's a very interesting idea, because it's somewhat, you don't have to really go off the premise that this is actually how it goes. And who knows if that's really how it goes. I don't really think that's the interesting implication of this, but really what it's saying is that you face the same problems. You can't avoid these problems. You can't avoid what's in front of you. You will always experience the exact same issue until you overcome it. You will always go through the exact same cycle of things until you persevere over it. Think of all of your shortcomings. All of your shortcomings started off somewhere small, but they gradually got bigger and bigger and bigger as you continued to neglect them. And that's really the interesting aspect of eternal recurrence, is that if everything happens forever, then you're trapped in this cycle until you actively change yourself. What you're going to do in the future is directly impacted by who you are right now. And most people never take the time to change. Most people never take the time to work on themselves. Most people never take the time to consciously be aware of themselves and say, you know what, I don't like the direction I'm going. I don't like these things that are happening to me. I don't like the path I'm following. I don't think I'm doing enough. I don't think I'm directing myself in the right path. And until we start asking ourselves those questions, until we start directing ourselves in the right way, until we start becoming aware of ourselves, we can't direct ourselves in a better fashion. We can't move ourselves in a better direction. There's this idea that your destiny is set in stone until you change your definition of who you are. Your destiny is set in stone unless you make the active and conscious decision to make a difference in who you are. Because everything you do is derivative of your thought. Everything you do is derivative of your personality. And what I mean by this is that your actions follow your thoughts. Your actions follow your moods. Your actions follow your emotions and everything about your personality that makes you up. And, just think about it this way. Would you react the same way to a problem 10 years ago that you would react to now? And the difference is, no, I would not. I would not react in the same way. In fact, I would react so much better. And I'm so happy that I had to go through everything I had to go through and experience everything I had to experience to make me the person capable of facing my life. Because if you put me from 10 years ago in my life right now, I don't know if I could handle that. And that's really the interesting aspect of this book, is that we're sort of in this endless cycle of existence. We're sort of in this endless cycle of life. And everything around us is ever changing. Everything around us is part of this cycle of birth, decay, death, and rebirth. And who knows if it goes on and on? Who knows if it keeps going? But this is just a book that talks about some really interesting ideas and ideas that will evoke questions that are things that I haven't found myself thinking about in a long time, things that I haven't found myself pondering on. And whenever you can read a book and it does that, whenever you can read a book and it brings out parts of yourself that you haven't thought about in years, or parts of yourself that you've never thought about, it's certainly an indication to read the book. And that's certainly why I enjoy this book so much. And not just that, it's really well written. The love story is actually tremendous. It really is. Like, I genuinely don't really care that much about characters when I read. I know it's not a good thing to say, but like, when I read books, I more so care about themes. I don't really get too wrapped up in the characters or their emotions. But Uspensky has a real way of making this love story very interesting, making it very deep, making it not surface level. The dialogue isn't like, oh, these people met and then instantly fell in love. Like, no, you see why they get along so well. You see the relationship form. You see them both slowly develop and get out of their shells and become something more and build this love, this companionship, and this desire to be with each other. It's fascinating. You could tell Uspensky's well read in Russian literature, because that's really what it reminds me of. And obviously Uspensky is Russian. You couldn't tell by the name. It's a very Russian name. But yeah, I had a whole lot of fun reading this. And in fact, I literally picked up the Tolstoy book I had on my desk simply because I wanted to read something else like this. And unfortunately, this is the only novel that Uspensky wrote. Maybe he would have had a great career as a novelist, and maybe we missed out on a lot of great masterpieces that he could have created, because I really did have a whole lot of fun reading this, and this really was a very unique experience. And in the end, there's this existential question. In the end, Uspensky leaves it pretty open-ended as to what the character does, but he does leave you with this sort of idea that we're all part of this bigger cycle, and whether we make the decision or not, whether we do anything or not, it doesn't really matter. And that's the interesting implication, is what do we do if we're free of responsibility? How do we act? How do we move forward? How do we live in a world where we're only as important as we make it out to be? These are all sorts of really interesting questions that I think are asked throughout this book. And I don't even know if I did a good job of explaining what is at the core of this book, because some of these things are just intuitive. Some of these things I can't put into words. And thinking back on this video, thinking back on what I said, I might have to go into this into more detail. I might have to talk about the plot. I might have to talk about the story to really show you what Uspensky's putting forward. But I don't want to do that for the fact that I want you to read this book. I don't know if anybody's really heard of this book. I heard about this book in passing on a podcast. I'll credit them if they ever see this video. I will. It's just, I don't know if they even want me saying their name. But anyway, with that said, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one. Yeah, this was the most fun I had reading a book in a very long time, and it was a nice change from feeling like I'm reading for the sake of reading. I'm reading for the sake of seeing the story so that I can see what the author's trying to say, or parse into his philosophy because of the decisions the characters made. I feel like this entire book, in each moment there's something interesting, and in each moment there's some interesting lesson, or there's some interesting takeaway, or there's some real carryover into everyday life that we can, attain some value from. So yeah, I feel like I already said this, but I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for all the support recently. It has been crazy, and yeah, it's back to having fun making videos. I feel like there was a few weeks where it was kind of, I don't know, it's not that it wasn't fun, but like, this is the most fun I've had making video in a long time, and perhaps it's just because I love this book so much, and perhaps I've just been picking the wrong books to talk about, but yeah, it is what it is. Love you guys so much. Peace out.